On a Friday evening in November, in a Target store in suburban Cleveland, Ohio, a 28-year-old black woman named Tasha Monroe was about to experience something that would expose a truth her managers had hidden for years. To the customers rushing past, to the corporate executives who'd never set foot in her store, to the manager who was about to humiliate her, Tasha was invisible. Just another minimum wage worker in a red vest. But in less than 48 hours, a routine cash audit would reveal evidence so damning that it would freeze an entire store on camera and change the lives of 17 employees. This is a story about what happens when someone refuses to be silenced. And it starts with $9. Tasha Monroe had been working at the Westlake Target for 4 years and 3 months. She'd started as a seasonal hire during the holiday rush, making $11.50 an hour, desperate for any work that would help her support her 6-year-old daughter, Imani, after her ex-husband had disappeared without paying a cent of child support. She lived in a modest apartment in Cleveland's East Side, a neighborhood that had seen better days. The building was old, the heat was inconsistent, and her neighbors included families like hers, working people trying to survive on wages that barely covered rent, utilities, food, and daycare. Tasha's mother had died when she was 16. Cancer. Her father had left when she was too young to remember him. She'd been raised by her grandmother, who'd passed away 2 years ago at 83, leaving Tasha truly alone, except for Imani. But Tasha wasn't someone who gave up. She'd graduated high school despite everything. She'd gone to community college for 2 semesters, studying accounting, before money ran out, and she'd had to drop out to work full-time. She dreamed of becoming a certified public accountant, of having a career with stability and respect. Instead, she scanned groceries and folded clothes at Target. But Tasha was good at her job, reliable, never late, never called in sick unless Imani was truly ill. She knew every price code, every store policy, every shortcut to make checkout faster. Customers liked her because she was friendly, efficient, and actually cared whether they found what they needed. Her coworkers liked her because she'd cover their shifts, helped them when they fell behind, and never complained about the 1,000 small indignities that came with retail work. Management liked her because she was profitable. Her register was always balanced. Her customer satisfaction scores were consistently high. She'd been named Employee of the Month twice, but they didn't like her enough to promote her, didn't like her enough to give her full-time hours with benefits, didn't like her enough to pay her more than $13.75 an hour after 4 years of perfect service. The store manager was a man named Derek Vaughn. He was 42, white, and had been with Target for 19 years, working his way up from cart attendant to store manager through a combination of corporate politics, strategic brown-nosing, and a willingness to cut corners that made his numbers look good on quarterly reports. Vaughn ran his store like a fiefdom. He had favorites, mostly young white employees who laughed at his jokes and didn't question his decisions, and he had targets. Employees he'd decided were problems, usually people of color who had the audacity to advocate for themselves or their coworkers. Tasha had been in the second category for the past year, ever since she'd quietly mentioned to an assistant manager that several Black and Latino employees had noticed they were consistently scheduled for fewer hours than their white counterparts with less seniority. Nothing had come of the observation officially, but Vaughn had noticed who'd made it. Since then, Tasha's schedule had become erratic. Her hours cut from 35 a week to 22. Her shifts changed with little notice, making daycare arrangements nearly impossible. She'd been written up 3 times for minor infractions that other employees committed regularly without consequence. Tasha knew what was happening. It was retaliation, soft enough to be deniable, hard enough to hurt, but she needed the job. So she kept her head down, did her work, and told herself it would get better. It didn't. On this particular Friday, November 18th, Tasha was working the 2:00 p.m. to 10:00 p.m. shift at Register 7. It had been a long day. The store was busy with early holiday shoppers. Her feet hurt. She'd barely had time for her 30-minute lunch break, and her register had been acting up all day, the cash drawer sticking, the card reader freezing, small technical glitches that slowed everything down. At 9:47 p.m., as Tasha was preparing to close out her register for the night, Derek Vaughn appeared behind her with the cash office supervisor, a nervous 23-year-old named Katie, who avoided eye contact. "Tasha," Vaughn said, his voice loud enough to carry to the other registers, "we need to count your drawer, now." Tasha looked up, surprised. "My shift doesn't end until 10. I usually count out after." "I said now," Vaughn interrupted. "We've received reports of discrepancies on your register." Tasha felt her stomach tighten. What kind of discrepancies? That's what we're about to find out. This was unusual. Registers were typically counted at the end of shifts in the cash office, privately. Doing it on the floor, in front of customers and coworkers, was humiliating and against store policy. "Can we do this in the cash office?" Tasha asked quietly. "No, we're doing it here. Open your drawer." Tasha's hands shook slightly as she opened the register. She'd been meticulous all day, as always. She counted back change carefully. She verified large bills. She'd been doing this for over 4 years without a single significant shortage. Vaughn pulled out a counting sheet and began removing bills from the drawer. Katie assisted, her discomfort visible. Other employees at nearby registers glanced over. Customers in line waited awkwardly. Vaughn counted deliberately, making a show of examining each bill. The process took 8 minutes. Finally, he looked at the starting cash amount, the transaction records, and his count. "You're short," he said loudly. "By how much?" Tasha asked. $9. $9. Out of thousands processed that day." "That's not possible," Tasha said. "I was careful. I checked every transaction." "Are you calling me a liar?" Vaughn's voice rose. "I just counted your drawer. You're short $9. That's theft." "It's not theft," Tasha said, her voice steady, despite the fear rising in her chest. "Cash drawers can be off by small amounts due to errors. The tolerance is $10 before it's considered." "Don't tell me store policy," Vaughn snapped. "You're short, again. This is the 3rd time this month." Tasha felt like she'd been slapped. "What? My drawer has never been short this month. I check my reports every shift. There's nothing. There are 3 documented shortages on your employee record," Vaughn said. $5 on November 3rd, $7 on November 11th, and now $9 tonight. That's $21 total. That's a pattern of theft. "I never saw any reports about shortages," Tasha said, her voice rising now. "If my drawer was short, I would have been notified. That's policy. I would have signed the discrepancy reports." "Well, you're being notified now," Vaughn said. He pulled out a printed form. "Sign this, acknowledging the shortage." Tasha read the form. It was a disciplinary action notice stating she'd been found short $9 on $11 on $11.18, and citing previous shortages as evidence of a pattern. It recommended termination. "I'm not signing this," Tasha said. Not until I see documentation of the other alleged shortages. And not until we review the security footage and transaction records to verify this count. You don't get to make demands, Vaughn said. You signed this, or you're fired for insubordination right now. Then I guess I'm fired, Tasha said quietly, because I'm not admitting to something I didn't do. The store had gone quiet. Other employees had stopped working. Customers were staring. Vaughn's face reddened. You want to do this the hard way? Fine. You're suspended without pay, pending investigation of theft. Security will escort you out. Leave your vest and name tag. I want to file a complaint, Tasha said. This is wrongful termination. This is retaliation. Retaliation for what? Vaughn asked with a smirk. For stealing? For speaking up about discriminatory scheduling practices, Tasha said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. For advocating for fair treatment. For being black and refusing to be silent. Get out of my store, Vaughn said, before I call the police and have you arrested for theft. Tasha felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. She removed her vest and name tag with shaking hands, placed them on the counter, and walked toward the exit with as much dignity as she could summon. As she passed Register 3, another cashier, a young white woman named Jenna, mouthed, "I'm sorry." At Register 5, a Latino man named Carlos looked at her with an expression that said he understood exactly what was happening because it had nearly happened to him. Tasha walked out into the cold November night, unemployed, humiliated, and absolutely certain of one thing: Derek Vaughn had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because Tasha Monroe hadn't just been scanning groceries for 4 years. She'd been watching, learning, documenting, and she knew exactly where the missing money was going. Tasha sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, crying. Not because she was scared, though she was. Not because she was angry, though she was. But because she was so tired. Tired of working so hard for so little. Tired of being treated like she was disposable. Tired of a system that protected people like Derek Vaughn and punished people like her. But as she drove home to relieve the babysitter and hold Imani, something hardened inside her. She'd spent 4 years being the perfect employee, being quiet, being grateful, accepting less than she deserved. That ended tonight. When Tasha got home, she logged into her laptop and opened a folder she'd been maintaining for 8 months. It was labeled Discrepancies and contained meticulously documented records of everything she'd noticed working at that Target store. Tasha had those 2 semesters of accounting education. She understood numbers, she understood patterns, and she'd noticed things that didn't add up. Register shortages that appeared on employee records but were never investigated. Cash deposits that didn't match the actual drawer counts. Inventory shrinkage numbers that seemed impossibly high for a store with extensive security systems. Time card adjustments that consistently shorted employees' hours by 15 or 20 minutes. Tasha had been documenting it all. Screenshots of schedule changes, photos of time clock records, her own personal log of every drawer, count every transaction, every shift she'd worked. She'd also been quietly talking to other employees, asking if they'd experienced similar issues, collecting stories, building a picture, and the picture was damning. Derek Vaughn was stealing, not dramatically, not obviously, but consistently, systematically, through a scheme so simple most people wouldn't notice. He was manipulating register counts, recording shortages that didn't exist, pocketing the difference. The amounts were small, $5 here, $10 there, but across 17 registers and multiple employees over months, it added up to thousands. He was also manipulating time cards, shaving minutes off employees' shifts. 20 minutes a day across 30 employees meant saving hundreds of hours of payroll per quarter. Hours that made his store's efficiency numbers look good. Hours that meant bonuses for him. Hours stolen from workers like Tasha, who could barely afford to lose 20 minutes of pay. Tasha had suspected for months. Tonight confirmed it. Vaughn had accused her of a shortage that didn't exist. He'd claimed there were previous shortages she'd never been told about. He documented it all to create a paper trail justifying her termination. But he'd made one critical mistake. Tasha had counted her drawer at the start of her shift that morning. She'd photographed the starting cash amount. She'd kept a running total in her personal log throughout the day. And her count showed she should have been over by $6, not short by $9. Someone had taken $15 from her drawer after she'd balanced it, and there was only one person who had access to do that. At 11:47 p.m., Tasha sent an email to Target's corporate ethics hotline. She attached 47 pages of documentation, transaction records, photos, her personal logs, testimonials from 5 other employees who'd experienced similar issues. She detailed everything: the false shortage accusation, the pattern of retaliation, the time card manipulation, the suspected cash theft. She titled the email, "Formal Complaint of Manager Theft, Fraud, and Discriminatory Retaliation at Store 2847. She hit send. Then she called an employment attorney whose number she'd saved months ago, just in case, left a voicemail explaining the situation, and went to bed, knowing her life was about to get much harder before it got better. What Tasha didn't know was that her email had landed in the inbox of someone who'd been looking for exactly this kind of evidence. Target's corporate office had received 3 anonymous complaints about Store 2847 in the past 6 months. Complaints about discriminatory practices, unusual turnover among minority employees, inventory discrepancies that didn't match theft patterns. A quiet internal investigation had been opened, but they needed proof. They needed someone willing to go on record, someone with documentation. They'd just found her. At 9:20 a.m. on Saturday morning, Tasha's phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Monroe? This is Patricia Chen from Target Corporate Loss Prevention. I received your email last night. I need to speak with you as soon as possible. Would you be available to meet today?" Tasha's heart raced. "Yes, when?" "How about noon? There's a coffee shop near your apartment, Safe Haven Cafe. I can meet you there. And Miss Monroe, bring everything you have, every document, every photo, every record. This is exactly what we've been looking for." They met at noon. Patricia Chen was a Chinese-American woman in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with the sharp eyes of someone who'd built a career finding thieves. "Miss Monroe," Chen said after they'd ordered coffee, "I'm going to be very direct with you. We've had concerns about Store 2847 for months, but we needed proof. Your email provided that proof. Now, I need you to walk me through everything." For 2 hours, Tasha did exactly that. She showed Chen her documentation, explained her suspicions about Vaughn's theft scheme, described the pattern of retaliation, named other employees who'd been affected. Chen took notes, asked sharp questions, cross-referenced Tasha's documents with her own records. Finally, she sat back. "Ms. Monroe, do you understand what you've uncovered here? I think Derek Vaughn is stealing from the store and framing employees to cover it up," Tasha said. "He is, but it's bigger than that. We've analyzed the patterns you've documented, cross-referenced them with time card records, cash deposits, and inventory reports. Derek Vaughn has been systematically stealing from Target for at least 2 years. We estimate he's taken more than $47,000. He's also stolen approximately $12,000 in wages from employees through time card manipulation, and he's wrongfully terminated 6 employees in the past 18 months to hide his tracks. Tasha felt sick. $47,000? Small amounts. Consistent. Smart, actually, if we weren't looking for it. He kept everything under the threshold that triggers automatic audits. But your documentation showed the pattern. That's what we needed. What happens now? Tasha asked. Now we audit. Completely. Every transaction, every cash count, every time card for the past 2 years. We're sending a team to the store Monday morning. We'll need you to be there. We'll need you to walk us through your documentation in detail. And Miss Monroe, Chen's expression softened slightly. You need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Vaughn will lawyer up. He'll claim you're lying. He'll say this is retaliation for your termination. You're going to have to stand firm. I can do that, Tasha said. I've been standing firm my whole life. I believe you, Chen said. One more thing. You're being reinstated as of today, full pay for the suspension period. And we're conducting a full review of the disciplinary actions and terminations Vaughn authorized. If any were wrongful, those employees will be compensated. Tasha felt tears forming. Thank you. Don't thank me, Chen said. You did this. You documented everything. You refused to be silenced. That took courage. Now we're going to make sure it counts. On Monday morning at 6:00 a.m., before the store opened, a team of 5 corporate auditors descended on store 2847. Patricia Chen led them. They were accompanied by 2 HR representatives and a corporate attorney. Derek Vaughn arrived at 7:30 a.m., his usual start time, completely unaware of what was waiting. He walked into the store to find his cash office locked and occupied by auditors, his office similarly commandeered, and Patricia Chen standing in the center of the store with a stern expression. Derek Vaughn? I'm Patricia Chen, Corporate Loss Prevention. We're conducting a comprehensive audit of this store. We need you to come with us. Vaughn's face went pale. What's this about? We'll discuss that in private. This way, please. They took him to the conference room. Chen laid out printed transaction records, cash deposit reports, time card records, and Tasha's documentation. Mr. Vaughn, we have evidence suggesting significant financial irregularities at this store during your tenure as manager. We're going to ask you some questions. You have the right to have an attorney present if you wish. I don't need an attorney, Vaughn said, his voice shaking slightly. What kind of irregularities? Cash shortages that were attributed to employees but don't match actual transaction records. Time card adjustments that systematically reduced employee hours. Inventory discrepancies that suggest either theft or poor record keeping. And specific allegations from a former employee, Tasha Monroe, that you falsely accused her of theft and wrongfully terminated her in retaliation for raising concerns about discriminatory practices. Vaughn's expression shifted from fear to anger. Tasha Monroe? This is about her. She was stealing. I documented it. She's just upset she got caught. You documented shortages of $9, $7, and $5 over a 3-week period, Chen said. But we've reviewed the actual transaction records and security footage. Those shortages don't exist. In fact, Ms. Monroe's drawer counts were consistently accurate, which raises the question, why did you fabricate them? I didn't fabricate anything, Vaughn said. The counts were accurate. Then you won't mind if we review the cash office procedures in detail? Chen opened another folder. Because we've discovered something interesting. Over the past 2 years, this store has reported employee-attributed cash shortages totaling 28,000. That's unusually high. Most stores our size report less than 5,000 annually. We have theft problems, Vaughn said. High-risk area. I've been documenting it. You've been documenting shortages. But we've reviewed the security footage for 15 of those incidents. In 12 cases, the employees accused of shortages can be seen on camera counting their drawers correctly. Their counts were accurate. But somehow, by the time you submitted the final reports, money was missing. Here's what we think happened, Mr. Vaughn. We think you've been taking money from employee drawers after they've balanced them, small amounts. You'd wait until they left for the day, access their closed drawer with your manager key, remove $5 or $10, then report it as an employee shortage. The employee would have no way to prove. Otherwise, because they weren't present when you accessed the drawer. That's insane, Vaughn said. Why would I do that? For the money. $47,000 over 2 years, plus another $12,000 you stole through systematic time card manipulation, shaving 15 to 20 minutes off employee shifts. You'd adjust their clock out times after they'd left. Small enough amounts that most didn't notice, but it added up. Chen pulled out more documents. We have time card records showing the adjustments. We have security footage showing you accessing registers after employees left. We have testimony from 6 employees describing the same pattern. Ms. Monroe experienced false shortage accusations, disciplinary actions, terminations. And we have Ms. Monroe's documentation proving that on November 18th, her drawer was not short $9. She photographed her starting cash. She logged every transaction. And her count showed she should have been over, not short. So where did the $9 shortage come from, Mr. Vaughn? Vaughn sat silently, his face ashen. We also have video from November 18th. Would you like to see it? Chen pulled out a tablet and pressed play. The footage showed Tasha closing out her register at 9:35 p.m. She counted carefully, recorded her total, and secured the drawer. At 9:42 p.m., Derek Vaughn appeared on camera. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he used his manager key to open Tasha's secure drawer. He removed bills. The footage wasn't clear enough to see denominations, but the action was unmistakable. He closed the drawer. And 7 minutes later, he approached Tasha with a cash office supervisor to count her drawer due to reported discrepancies. The conference room was silent. Mr. Vaughn, Chen said quietly, this is theft, fraud, and wrongful termination. You stole from the company, you stole from employees, and you destroyed careers to cover your tracks. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Vaughn said nothing. His hands were shaking. You're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You're not to return to any target property, and we'll be forwarding our findings to law enforcement. You'll be hearing from the police. I want my lawyer, Vaughn finally said. That's your right. Security will escort you out now. 2 security officers entered. Vaughn stood on shaking legs and was let out of the store he'd managed for 6 years. The employees who'd arrived for the morning shift watched in shock as their manager was escorted out by security. Word spread quickly. At 10:30 a.m., Patricia Chen gathered all available employees in the break room. Good morning. I'm Patricia Chen from Corporate Loss Prevention. I know you have questions about what's happening. Let me explain. We've been conducting an investigation into financial irregularities at this store. That investigation concluded this morning with the termination of Derek Vaughn for theft, fraud, and multiple policy violations. Gasps filled the room. We've discovered that Mr. Vaughn was systematically stealing from the store and from you. He was taking money from registers and attributing it to employee shortages. He was manipulating time cards to reduce your paid hours, and he was wrongfully terminating employees who questioned his practices. If you've been accused of cash shortages, had your time card adjusted, or been disciplined by Mr. Vaughn in ways that seemed unjust, we want to hear from you. We're reviewing all personnel actions he authorized. If you were wronged, we'll make it right. One employee, Carlos from Register 5, raised his hand. What about Tasha Monroe? She was fired Friday night. Miss Monroe has been reinstated with full back pay. In fact, her documentation is what allowed us to uncover this theft. She'll be returning to work, and we're reviewing a promotion opportunity for her. She showed extraordinary integrity and courage. Can we see the video? Someone asked. Chen hesitated. Normally, that would be confidential. But given that this affected all of you and that criminal charges are pending, I think you deserve to know the truth. She set up a laptop connected to the break room TV. The footage from November 18th played. Every employee watched Derek Vaughn remove money from Tasha's drawer, then return 7 minutes later to accuse her of being short. The room erupted in anger. He did that to me, one cashier said. Me too, another echoed. I was fired for a shortage last year, a young man said. I knew I wasn't short. I counted 3 times, but he said I was lying. Chen raised her hand for quiet. I need each of you who experienced this to fill out a witness statement. We're building a comprehensive case, not just for Target's lawsuit, but for the criminal prosecution. Your testimony matters. Over the next 2 hours, 17 employees came forward, each with similar stories: false shortage accusations, time card manipulation, disciplinary actions that seemed unfair, a pattern of retaliation against anyone who questioned Vaughn's authority, especially employees of color. The picture that emerged was damning. Derek Vaughn hadn't just been a thief. He'd been a bully who'd used his position to steal, retaliate, and create a culture of fear. On Tuesday afternoon, Tasha returned to the store for the first time since her termination. She walked through those doors with her head high, her red vest back on, and her name tag reading Tasha Monroe, Team Lead. Chen had offered her an assistant manager position, but Tasha had declined for now. She wanted to finish her accounting degree first, but she'd accepted a team lead role with a 4 raise, full-time hours, and benefits. As she walked through the store, employees approached her. Some thanked her. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner. Some shared their own stories of Vaughn's abuse. Jenna from Register 3 hugged her and cried. I knew what he was doing to you was wrong, but I was scared. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Tasha said. Fear is powerful. That's why people like Vaughn get away with it for so long, but not anymore. Carlos approached her. Tasha, I filled out a witness statement, told them everything Vaughn did to me, cut my hours when I asked about my schedule, wrote me up for being 2 minutes late when white employees were 15 minutes late regularly. Thank you for having the courage to document it all. We all deserve better, Tasha said. Now we're going to get it. Over the next 3 weeks, the investigation expanded. Target's legal team interviewed all 17 employees who'd come forward. They reviewed 2 years of transaction records, time cards, and video footage. They calculated the full extent of Vaughn's theft. The final numbers were staggering. Derek Vaughn had stolen $47,300 from the store through cash manipulation. He'd stolen $12,600 from employees through time card fraud. He'd wrongfully terminated 6 employees, all people of color, to hide his theft. He'd disciplined 32 employees with false accusations. And he'd created a hostile work environment that drove away good workers and cost Target hundreds of thousands in turnover and training expenses. On December 15th, Derek Vaughn was arrested at his home. He was charged with theft, fraud, forgery, and multiple counts of wage theft. The case made local news. Former Target manager arrested for systematic theft of nearly $60,000. The headlines read. The story detailed how a cashier's meticulous documentation had uncovered the scheme. Tasha's name wasn't used. She'd requested privacy. But the story focused on how one employee's courage had exposed years of corruption. Target issued a public statement. We take allegations of theft and misconduct extremely seriously. When we received detailed documentation from an employee, we immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. That investigation confirmed systematic theft and fraud by a manager. He has been terminated, and we're working with law enforcement to ensure full accountability. We're also reviewing our procedures to prevent similar incidents and compensating affected employees. The 17 employees who'd been victims of Vaughn's time card fraud received back pay totaling $12,600. The 6 wrongfully terminated employees received settlements totaling $340,000. Tasha received $15,000 in back pay and damages for wrongful termination and retaliation. But more importantly, Target implemented new policies. Cash handling procedures were strengthened. Manager access to closed registers was restricted. Time card adjustments required employee verification. And a confidential hotline was created for employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation. The changes affected all 1926 Target stores nationwide. Corporate estimated it would protect tens of thousands of employees from similar abuse. On March 22nd, 4 months after that humiliating Friday night, Tasha sat in a courtroom, watching Derek Vaughn plead guilty to theft and fraud charges. He received 3 years in prison and was ordered to pay full restitution. As Vaughn was led away in handcuffs, he glanced at Tasha. She met his eyes without flinching, didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at him with the quiet dignity of someone who'd stood up for what was right and won. After the hearing, Patricia Chen approached Tasha outside the courthouse. "How are you feeling?" Chen asked. "Relieved," Tasha said, "and angry that it took so long, and grateful that it's over." "It's not entirely over," Chen said. Target's leadership was impressed with your documentation and your accounting skills. They're offering you a position in corporate loss prevention, full-time, salary, benefits, and they'll pay for you to complete your accounting degree. Tasha's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. We need people who understand how theft happens at the store level, who can spot the patterns, who have the integrity to report it. You've proven you have all of that. Interested?" "Yes," Tasha said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." 6 months later, Tasha Monroe walked across the stage at Cuyahoga Community College and received her associate's degree in accounting. Imani, now 7, cheered loudly from the audience. Tasha's co-workers from the Westlake Target were there. Patricia Chen was there. Even some of the 17 employees who'd been vindicated came to celebrate. Tasha's new job in corporate loss prevention paid $52,000 a year, nearly triple what she'd made as a cashier. Target was covering her continued education at Cleveland State University, where she was working toward her bachelor's degree. But more than the money or the degree, Tasha had something more valuable: proof that standing up to injustice matters. That documentation can be more powerful than authority. That one person refusing to be silent can change a system. She thought often about that Friday night, about standing at Register 7 while Derek Vaughan humiliated her, about the fear and anger and helplessness she'd felt. But she also thought about what came after, about the email she sent at 11:47 p.m., about the evidence she'd compiled, about the 17 employees who'd been vindicated, about the policy changes that would protect thousands more. She thought about Carlos, who'd been promoted to assistant manager, about Jenna, who'd found the courage to report a new manager's misconduct at a different store, about the 6 wrongfully terminated employees who'd received settlements that changed their lives. And she thought about Imani, who'd watched her mother fight and win, who'd learned that even when powerful people try to make you invisible, you can make yourself seen, not by being loud, not by being aggressive, but by being meticulous, by documenting the truth, by refusing to be silenced. One day, Tasha would tell Imani the full story, about the $9, about the 312 hours of stolen wages, about the $47,000 Derek Vaughan thought he'd get away with. But mostly, she'd tell Imani about the 47 pages of documentation that changed everything, about the power of paying attention, about the importance of standing up even when you're scared. Because that's what heroes do. Not the heroes in movies with superpowers and dramatic speeches, but the real heroes. The ones in red vests making $13, $75 an hour. The ones who notice when something's wrong and refuse to pretend it's normal. The ones who document every detail because they know that truth, when properly recorded, is more powerful than any lie. Tasha Monroe didn't become famous, didn't become rich, didn't get a movie made about her life. She got something better. She got justice. She got vindication. She got a career doing work that mattered. And she got to wake up every morning knowing that when she'd been tested, when someone with power had tried to break her, she hadn't broken. She'd documented, she'd reported, she'd stood firm. And 17 other people got justice because of it. Because Tasha understood something Derek Vaughan never would. Dignity isn't about how much money you have or how much power you wield. Dignity is about how you treat people when you have power, and how you stand up for yourself when you don't. Derek Vaughan had all the power. He was the manager. He controlled schedules, disciplinary actions, who got promoted and who got fired. But Tasha had something more powerful. She had the truth, and she had the discipline to document it. In the end, truth won. It doesn't always, but this time it did. And that matters. This story reminds us that in every workplace, in every institution, in every system, there are people like Derek Vaughan. People who abuse power, who steal not just money but dignity, who silence anyone who questions them, who create cultures of fear where speaking up feels impossible. But this story also reminds us that there are people like Tasha Monroe, people who notice, who document, who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable, who understand that silence protects the guilty and that speaking up, even when it's terrifying, protects everyone. Tasha could have stayed silent, could have taken the termination, could have moved on to another minimum wage job and told herself it wasn't worth the fight. Instead, she sent an email at 11:47 p.m. with 47 pages of evidence. And that email exposed a theft scheme that had victimized dozens of people. That's the power of refusing to be silenced. So here's the question this story leaves you with. What would you do? If you notice something wrong at your workplace, would you document it? Would you report it? Would you risk retaliation to protect yourself and others? Or would you stay silent? Tell yourself it's not your problem. Assume someone else will handle it? Because the reality is this: injustice happens every day in places we don't see. Someone's taking credit for your work. Someone's stealing from the till. Someone's harassing the new employee. Someone's manipulating numbers to hide their failures. And most of the time, people stay silent. Because speaking up is hard. Because it takes courage. Because there's risk involved. But sometimes, someone like Tasha Monroe decides that silence costs too much, that their dignity is worth fighting for, that other people deserve protection, and that person documents everything, sends the email, makes the call, files the complaint. And the system that was designed to protect the powerful has to confront the truth. That's how change happens. Not through dramatic revolutions, but through meticulous documentation, through courage in the face of fear, through one person deciding that enough is enough. Tasha Monroe was that person. Derek Vaughan learned that the hard way, and 17 employees got justice because of it. Choose to be someone who notices, who documents, who speaks up, who protects the vulnerable, who believes that truth matters more than power. Choose to be like Tasha Monroe. Choose integrity, choose courage, choose documentation. Because someday, you might be the one who needs someone to notice, someone to speak up, someone to prove the truth. And you'll hope that person has the courage Tasha had. This story is a fictional dramatization inspired by real events of workplace theft, retaliation, and the power of documentation. While the characters and specific circumstances are creative works, the themes, wage theft affecting millions of workers annually, managerial abuse of power, and the extraordinary courage it takes for vulnerable employees to report misconduct, reflect realities documented by labor rights organizations nationwide. In a world where the powerful often escape accountability and the vulnerable are silenced, choose to be like Tasha Monroe. Choose documentation. Choose the truth. Choose justice. Choose to stand up even when standing costs everything. Because sometimes $9 is about so much more than $9. Sometimes it's about dignity.